Hello everyone and welcome to another Scots Whay podcast. Today we're talking to musician and poet Roy Moller. Hello Roy.
Hi there Alistair, how you doing?
I'm well, thanks. We're here really to talk about the Dunbar CoastWord Festival which you're involved in. It's on from 27th of May to 29th of May.
That's right.
If you could just tell us a bit about it and then we can chat more.
Sure, well it started in 2013 as a thing called Dunbar's Wee Festival of Words, so it was quite a sort of homespun event, and that's something that we've tried to preserve as we move forward with it. It became CoastWord in 2014, so this is the third year of CoastWord, and it involves bringing established names in the world of literature and music to Dunbar, but also introducing some local talent, giving local talent a stage along with the better known names.
Yeah, it strikes me looking at the programme, you've got a real mix. You've got names like Liz Lockhead, Janice Galloway's there, Colin Will there, but you've also got specific Dunbar themed events. Talk a little bit about how it's split up over the 3 days, because there's a lot crammed into those 3 days.
Yes, we have a variety of events, as you say. We have workshops, and that's where some of our performers are also involved. We have Janice Galloway doing a writing workshop and giving a talk as well. There's a songwriting workshop from the Borders singer-songwriter Kirsty Law. Rachel McCrum, who is our outgoing writer-in-residence, she's giving a poetry workshop, and she's also a performer in one of our events, Words to the Beat. So we have, in the mornings and afternoons, we have workshops and talks and author events, and then in the evenings they're more weighted towards performance and a mixture of music and spoken word.
Yeah, it really struck me that you're making your guests work for their money.
Well, who's saying we're giving them any money?
Okay, fair enough.
No, we are.
But to get the chance, I think, to get a writing workshop with Janice Galloway or a poetry workshop with Rachel McCrum, it's quite something.
Yes, I mean we hopefully, I think it's something that the performers enjoy, and I know that Rachel McCrum's workshop, for instance, is very much a sound-based workshop.
Right.
So in a way it's quite avant-garde and also quite elemental because it's using the sounds of the sea and the localities. So I think it gives them something, another string to their bow, if you like. And I think it's quite a satisfying thing for a performer to get into the nitty-gritty that way, as well as delivering their turn in front of a big audience.
I can see that. I think the idea of it being more interactive, if you're there for the whole weekend, you can really take part and not just sit and be a member of the audience.
Well, that is something that we hope to encourage, that people will come and stay for the weekend, performers and audience alike. It's great to see some of our performers come to events that they are not in or they're not hosting, and so we certainly hope that people come to our Spotlight in Dunbar feature, which is, as I was mentioning, we've tried to bring keep the local focus with us over the course of the festivals, and this year we have a talk on John Muir, who is probably the most famous son of Dunbar, an international explorer who was born in Dunbar.
That name jumped out at me because it's one I don't really know. Can you say a bit more about John Muir?
He was born in Dunbar and left to visit America when he was around about 8 or 9 years old, I think, and he became one of the best known conservationists in North America, and he ended up having a meeting with President Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt,
right?
Who was a great admirer of his works. So he's well known in North America. But I have to confess, I hadn't heard of him till I visited Dunbar. And although we have a John Muir house in Dunbar and there's a lot of John Muir themed activities, I think there's a lot of information about John Muir and about his writings, because as well as being an explorer, he was a very prolific author and quite a man of words.
Right, okay.
There's a lot to share about John Muir, and in addition to that we have a history of Dunbar's closes, a close in in the East Coast is a sort of vennel or passageway rather than it would be in the west of Scotland. And we've got a film about featuring some of our local Dunbar poets.
Is this your film? Is this?
Well, I'm the auteur on that one.
Okay, so explain a bit about that.
Well, that's just a small smattering of local poets. We have Colin Will, who you were mentioning earlier, who's a prominent poet in Dunbar. He's a member of our committee. He's also on the involved with the Scottish Poetry Library and in Stanza Festival as well. So features him, our festival director Hannah Lavery, who's an accomplished poet as well. If I try and list everybody, I'll probably miss somebody out. So I'll just mention the people that are on the committee for. But we have 5 or 6 local poets, basically describing the Dunbar area in words. And I've been out with my camera and, if I'm honest, with my iPhone as well, filming what I hope is appropriate footage and just sticking the two together in a film poem. So I've been, in my spare hours, I've been slaving in front of my MacBook trying to put that together. And I think it is going to be a good marriage of vision and poetry, and we've got a little bit of music in there. So I would. The world premiere is on Sunday the 29th, and I would urge everybody to come along to that because it's, as I say, a unique showing of the film.
Another event which has got Dunbar links. It's got a fantastic title: Tales of Love, Death, Faith, and Fishing.
That's Richard Klein and Karen Dietz.
Yeah,
and they're a very talented local songwriting and performing duo. They perform separately as well, but when they come together, I think they're as good as. I watched the BBC Two Folk Awards the other week, and I think Karen and Richard are up there with anybody you care to mention. And they're writing songs about fishing disasters, and it's all very. You can imagine Ewan McCall having ploughed a similar furrow to the material, and they perform it beautifully. There's Gabriel Garcia Lorca influences in there. So it's a very satisfying blend, an informative blend as well. Their songs make you want to go and research more about the subject matter.
Yeah, and I think it's a rich area for examination, and of course it has done in the folk tradition before.
Absolutely.
I think particularly, if you've been stuck for a long time in the West Coast, you don't get to hear enough about those kind of things and the kind of coastal themes that perhaps you've learned more about now that you're in Dunbar.
I would certainly agree. I mean, Dunbar has, I think, an affinity as a coastal town it's on the same latitude as Leith. And both Leith and Dunbar are slightly north of Edinburgh and north of Glasgow, yet we're closer to England. So it's a strange geography in that way. I can never quite get that through my head when I'm getting a train from Glasgow back to Dunbar, that I'm not actually heading south when I get to Edinburgh, I'm heading further east. But we have an affinity, I think, with Leith, with Fife, which we can see from the shore in Dunbar, and also with the north of England ports. There's a lot of people from the north of England have moved to Dunbar. And so I think there's a sort of unique psychogeography.
There is an interesting tradition, I think, there from the north of England up the east coast, which sometimes seems to be forgotten in terms of language, in terms of shared industry, things like that.
I saw a meme today actually that said that Celtic was spoken in the vast. I always take these memes with a hefty mountain of salt, but it claimed that in the 12th century or the 13th century, in 1200, Gaelic was spoken in the vast majority of Scotland, but in the southeast of Scotland, where Dunbar is, there was a narrow pocket of Scots being spoken.
Right.
So you could make an argument for Dunbar being at the hub of the early Scots language. But also with the movable border, and we're as close to Berwick as we are to Edinburgh, Berwick being in Scotland and not being in Scotland. I think it's quite a fluid border. When you go down to Berwick and you're in Northumbria, it feels, there's so much different, yet so much the same. The landscape is exactly the same. It's a really interesting piece of coast, and Abs is where the first merchant ship of World War I was sunk by a U-boat.
Oh, really?
And so the whole area is literally littered with history.
Wow.
With wrecks, with piracy, with you name it.
The tradition of song and poetry in the borders anyway, is such a strong one.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where Kirsty Law, who's our songwriting writer in residence, comes from.
Yeah.
So, she brings with her that, although she's very young, she brings with her that rich, centuries-old tradition.
You were saying before we started that you've only been in Dunbar for a few years now.
That's right, yeah.
Did you have any idea of the kind of culture that it came from there, or is it something that you've discovered?
Both are true, I would say. I had a slight idea of it, and I'd wanted to move from Glasgow for a while, and coming originally from Leith, I'd wanted to move back to the East Coast, but I didn't want to move directly back.
Sure.
And I'd read a bit about Dunbar, and it seemed to have a sort of artistic hub to it, aspect to it. But not until I actually went there was I aware of just simple things like the quality of light. And Dunbar doesn't just attract musicians and writers; it attracts artists and makers. There's a lot of people involved in crafts, and I think it's a bit like St Ives in the sense of the quality of light. It's the sunniest place in Scotland, and the third sunniest place or fourth sunniest place in the UK, and I think that does attract makers of all sorts as well. And the year that we arrived is also the year, through sheer coincidence, is also the year that CoastWord started as the Dunbar Wee Festival of Words. So things have sort of grown. I'm not taking any credit for that, but things have sort of grown since my wife and my son and I have been there.
So what was the original, you called the Wee Festival of Words, and was it literally that? Was it just
It was earlier I said it was sort of homespun. I don't mean that in any sort of reductive fashion, but it was a way of it was Hannah Lavery, our festival director, organised that, and it was just a way of giving a voice to local writers, whilst also bringing in a few connections, a few people that we knew of to Dunbar, and but by the next year that had grown to the point where we had Bernard McClaverty as a patron, and we had Liz Lockhead giving a performance during her tenureship as Macca, and she's coming back this year to be part of our Words to the Beat performance. So I think things have really sort of snowballed, because we have an audience in Dunbar that's ripe for this sort of thing, because the transport connections, specifically the train, are so awkward, with such early cut-offs for getting into Dunbar and leaving Dunbar. There is, to a certain extent, a captive audience who have to make a huge undertaking to get to Edinburgh or Glasgow, not to get to there, but to come back. So it's good to bring people out, and it's also good to give Dunbar people the chance to perform. And it's a great audience. It's not a Glasgow audience, it's not an Edinburgh audience, it's something special. It's definitely a Dunbar vibe.
Well, somebody told me a couple of years ago, and it's again one of these things you might, have a raised eyebrow at, but that there are more festivals in Scotland now per head than, anywhere else in Europe. I think that was the quote. But there certainly are, and I've been to a few of them, small festivals which are very much defined by where they are. You've got the Film Festival in Dunoon, and you've got the Ullapool Book Festival, which has really grown recently, and various music festivals. Went to New Lanark, which was just mainly about Lanark musicians turning up. So there does seem to be a real desire to have something that, yes, hopefully brings in people from outside, but also celebrates what's already there.
Yes, and I think with CoastWord, certainly we've hopefully struck a chord where we can celebrate Dunbar and be proud about our town without any sort of kale yard or biscuit tin element to it. It feels real.
Some of the events that just jumped out to me, where you've got every evening you've got a kind of event night. I think the opening night you've got a kind of ceilidh, or at least a musical event.
A musical event, or the CoastWord Curie Inn. Yes, it's not there'll be, well, there might be spontaneous dancing, but there'll be no Jimmy Shand records, although I'm not ruling that out for future years. The Koreans, I guess it's the folkier of our two music and spoken word nights.
And then on the Saturday evening, as you say, you've got Liz Lockhead appearing, and also Withered Hand, who's a big fan of Withered Hand. Is that just going to be separately, or do you know if there'll be any collaboration?
There's nothing planned as a direct collaboration, but having said that, we have Tenement and Tempo playing, who are Monica Queen and Johnny Smiley, ex of Thrum and of Monica Queen. They're now trading as Tenement and Tempo, and Liz Lockhead she's got a new book coming out this month, and called Fugitive Colours, and I don't know if the poem's in it, but she's written a poem which I've seen her perform at Noiriki, and she also performed at CoastWord, a kind of standalone CoastWord event we had last year, where she's talking about, I think it's called Old Vinyl, and she's basically riffing on the pleasures and bittersweet memories brought up by listening to old records, and the jumps and the crackles and the warmth. And I thought it would be a good idea if Monica and Johnny, maybe as well as their own songs, tackled some classics from the Great American Songbook.
Yeah.
So there may not be, well, I think there will be an element of collaboration going on without giving the game away on the night. But as far as Liz Lockhead and Monica and Johnny are concerned, then I think there will certainly be a blend. They'll follow each other. So Tenement and Tempo will play, and then Liz Lockhead will waft onto the stage and do her thing. So we hope it will be that'll be a seamless event.
That sounds like a great night. For those who don't know, I think Monica Queen's got one of the great voices.
Yeah.
She's just an amazing singer.
I've been fortunate enough to sing with her on a couple of records, and she's very easy to work with as well. Nice person. And that night we also have someone else who's very easy to work with, and I've made records with too, Michael Peterson.
Oh yes.
And his work with Kevin Williamson at Noiriki has been a real inspiration to me as far as getting involved in putting events on.
I don't think anyone's really done it better than the Noiriki have in the last few years in Scotland. They really, I think, even stepped up to fill a gap that was there.
I think it was a gap. I mean, I think there is still a gap in Edinburgh for live music. I don't think it's any secret that the council aren't making things very easy with the noise laws on that one. But I think in other ways, people didn't even realise they had an itch till Noiriki started to scratch it.
That's a really good way of putting it.
It works on so many levels because the way it's timed as well, it starts quite early. So it can. I have to rush back to Dunbar every time I'm there, but it can work in a kind of pre-club way for people as well. It's really nicely pitched. And Michael and Kevin have just done such a sterling job.
Absolutely. And I think, talking from a Glasgow point of view, now that the Arches is shut down, there's even more of a need for that kind of thing in Scotland as a whole.
Absolutely. And they have merged, as the Skinny said of them, they have merged the sort of ideas of high culture and low culture. They've really broken down those divisions. And there is something for everybody, apart from the very easily offended.
Well, unfortunately, there's plenty of those kicking about. On the Sunday evening, we're promised an evening of film and music. What kind of, how will that shape up?
The Sunday evening, that's Roxana Vilk and her band GOL.
Yeah.
It might be pronounced Gol, I'm not sure, GOL. And she's that's been in. She's a performer in many different disciplines, and the event is basically raising awareness of refugees. The benefits of going to Dunbar helps Syrians in the Scottish Refugee Council. So we're excited to find out exactly how she blends her material, but it's going to be a multimedia event, and that will be our closing event of the festival. So I think it'll be quite hard hitting in places, but hopefully it'll also have a vibe of celebration. Not one to count our chickens, but we'll be celebrating the end of the festival through words and music and film.
Mentioned there, you're playing with various people. Yeah, I mean, you've been involved in Scottish music scene for quite a while. The last thing I think I remember of yours would be One Domino.
Yeah, that came out on an Edinburgh label called Stereogram in 2014, and that was the last airplay I ever got in the Mark Riley programme.
I was going to say, called it Scotland's Best Kiss.
That's right,
Secret.
and I traded in that for years, and I think that was probably a faux pas on my part. I just clutched that baby too hard, Who knows? But after that, I did an album called My Week Beats Your Year, which was the sort of soundtrack to a fringe show that I did for Apple Tree Writers, for Hannah Lavery at Apple Tree Writers, which is the sort of publishing wing of CoastWord in a way, and so that was that got 10 out of 10 in Louder Than Warm, so that was a sort of apex of a certain point. I've got a new album out now on a Canadian label called The Beautiful Music out of Ottawa, and the album's called There Are 1,000 Untold Stories, and following that there'll be a sort of companion piece. And that's going to be called it's basically the same title with the word more added to it, because there's going to be more stuff, unreleased stuff, and then that's it. I'm quitting.
Are you?
I'm finishing. I'm just going to do the poetry as me, and I'm going to I'm putting a band together called the Broughton Street Sailors,
right,
with my friend Dave, who's played live with me, with Ian Stoddart, who was he was like Dave, who was at school with me, was the year above me. He was a great drummer. He was in Wyn. He's been he was in Everest the Hard Way.
Yeah.
He's been in loads of the Apples, loads and loads of bands. And a fantastic drummer, and a guy called Latch, who's the progenitor of anti-folk in New York, and a mainstay now for quite a few years of the Edinburgh music and spoken word scene.
I know his stuff a bit, yeah.
Yeah, so that's, I really wanted to put some distance between the two things, because the poetry I'm writing at the moment is quite personal, and I feel I just want to have sort of fun with the music, and the most, not necessarily the subject matter, all light-hearted, but you just can't beat the fun that you have with as a part of a band.
Yeah, sure.
And these guys were playing with me anyway. We played at the CCA, the Stereogram night in December, and we followed Tam Dean Byrne, who was doing a great one-man performance, and beforehand we were in the dressing room, and we were all acoustically jamming songs from Elvis's 1968 TV special, and I just thought, this is what it's all about, and Tam came in and started rocking, and I think it's the best gig I've ever done, because the band were just springy, they were really good, and I thought, that's it. I've enough slogging around doing my own stuff. I want to be in a band, and I want to be in a band with these guys.
Yeah.
And then I was looking at Facebook one night after a glass of wine, and the Lost Edinburgh site put up this picture of these sailors hanging outside a building, literally hanging outside a building from the second and third floor, and then the caption said Broughton Street Sailors, and I thought, that's it. The band's going to be called Broughton Street Sailors. So that's what's going to happen.
That sounds great. And that'll be mainly doing live stuff, and
I think so. We'd like to
worrying too much about the recording of it.
Maybe just try and go into an analog studio and record a 7-inch single.
Yeah.
And we have my solo stuff and Latch's solo stuff, and anything the band come up with to draw on. So rather than, I was in London recently playing a Stereogram show. It was great fun. I had a great time. But we were opening the show, and I'd rather do less shows, but sort of make an event of them after all these years and things, So we'll see what happens.
I was going to ask you how you see the difference. Is there a difference between the songs you do and the poetry you do? But I think you've already answered that.
Well, yeah, and I would add that the songs are very much scattershot, sort of imagery, and they have the music to add layers of suggestion, and also the way that I sing them. Although I'm pretty much not as expressive as Frank Sinatra, but there are elements you can use to help get the meaning over.
Of course.
With the poetry, I'm one for just enunciating the words as clearly as I can and not doing too much acting out. I just want the words to work on their own, you know. So it's much more of a discipline. I'm not a fan, as far as my own writing is concerned, of poems that I can't understand. I mean, I have written poems that I come back 3 weeks later and I don't know what they meant.
Yeah.
I don't want to put them out there. I want every poem to at least be clear to me.
Okay. Oh yeah.
I don't care if the songs aren't clear to me.
Right.
I really don't.
You did have a collection of poetry, I believe, imports.
I did, yeah, and that's on the Apple Tree Writers Press imprint. That came out in December 2014, and I'm working on a follow-up collection called Carol, which will be launched at the Scottish Poetry Library, I think the 10th of September.
And are you actually going to be doing any performing at CoastWord? Or is it not scheduled?
Unscheduled, possibly. We'll see how many sherries it takes for me to do a Bono and climb onto the PA. Wave a white flag.
That sounds like perfect for the end of the old weekend. But what interests me, we've talked a little bit about Noiriki and other events, and it seems that festivals such as CoastWord are providing somewhere where people of like minds can get together, and before that was not an easy thing to do. You maybe had a certain club night, or you maybe had a bar that you went to, where you knew everyone else had sort of like minds, but to have these festivals which can last for days, and to give over for the whole weekend, which is quite a commitment, but a very worthwhile commitment. And
I agree 100%. I mean, I first got that vibe from Noiriki. I was actually doing a Simon and Garfunkel tribute night in Maryhill Borough Halls, and Michael was there from Noiriki, and he saw me doing a song called Faking It, which I decided to do in the style of a Cockney David Bowie. And he came up to me, thought it was a professional David Bowie impersonator, but I'm only faking it. And so, although I might have been a professional Anthony Newley impersonator, I suppose.
Yes, it's a fine line.
It's a fine line. So we got chatting, and he asked if I wanted to do a few songs. This was very early in Noiriki when it was at the Scottish Book Trust, and I came through, and the atmosphere and that's what turned things for me, and what made me want to start writing poetry again. It was I just felt completely at home, and every Noiriki I've been to has had that vibe. And when CoastWord's up and running, when we've set everything up and it's happening, and I look around the audience, I get that same that feeling. I absolutely, and the fact that it's not just for one night, that it's a 3-day thing. Absolutely, 100%
I think
agree.
when I saw the lineup, you went, there's nothing here that I wouldn't want to go to and learn about. And I think particularly, as I mentioned at the beginning, for people who are interested in writing or performing themselves, or just creating in any way themselves, there's a real opportunity here to get involved with some of the very best around.
Absolutely, and it's a friendly vibe, and something again that Noiriki, and I'm sure I've never made it along to a rally in Broad, but I'm sure it's the same thing there, that it's a very egalitarian vibe. There's no stars in the dressing room doors. There's no dressing rooms, for a start.
That helps. So how can people learn more about it? The website?
www.coastword.co.uk, and from there you can you can see all the events. You can download a copy of the programme of this CoastWord on Facebook. I won't try and attempt to regurgitate that address, but if you look at CoastWord, or the actual festival itself, CoastWord 2016, if you put that into your search browser in Facebook, you will find that.
And just from looking at some of the pictures that are on the website, it just looks like a beautiful place to go and visit. It is. As I say, it's the sunniest place in Scotland. But even when the weather's sort of moody, it's still stunning. So I would say that's a perfect weekend for anybody. I wake up in the morning, I look out the window, and I can't believe I live there. Yeah. And that never goes away. That says it all. I think fantastic. Well, anyone listening to this, if you've got a spare weekend between the 27th and 29th, I would suggest you get yourself down. I think it's going to be a huge success. Roy, thanks very much for talking to us. You're very welcome, Alistair. And can I just say, I would like to say a special mention for our write-in residence
for this year, on to next year, Catherine Simpson. She's a very talented author whose novel True Story has recently been published to great acclaim. She's
True
Story, all
Okay,
one word.
I will have to check that out.
And I would advise readers, listeners, to become readers of that book. And Catherine will be in attendance throughout the whole festival, and we're very, very happy to.
Before we shut down, is there anything else you want to kind of flag up?
Well, we've just to mention, if I can, Alice, just very quickly, we've got Anne Cleeves as well, the author of Shetland.
Oh yes, now I did want to mention that because for those who don't know, Anne Cleeves is the person behind the books which became the inspiration for the television show.
That's right.
The Jimmy Perez.
Jimmy Perez, that's right. And she's giving a talk about her various characters that she's created. Janice Galloway, I think we mentioned. We've also got Jerry Cambridge, who's the editor of The Dark Horse. He's also a mean harmonica player. He put together the new, he designed the new Noiriki collection, Untitled 2.
Oh, right.
And he's a very accomplished book designer and a very good poet, and he's giving a poetry masterclass. We also have Isla Dewar, the author of Women Talking Dirty, as well. And to mention the other people in the Kurian, we've got Kim Edgar, an Edinburgh singer-songwriter, Davy Robertson, who's an a cappella East Lothian. I don't know what he sort of sings the news in a not like Lance Percival.
Sings the news.
Sings the news. Yes, you'll have to come and see him. Dunbar Sings, who are a local choir led by Karen Dietz. Dunbar's Writing Mums, who are mums in Dunbar and grandmums in Dunbar, who write, and that's to a very high standard. And also Firefly 45, who are a local group, very much in the Fairport Convention vibe. I think I've got everybody out. Well, there's a few others. Lindsay McGregor, Jeanette Ayachi, and Claire Askew. If I've missed anyone out, Fiona Ritchie Walker as well. And if I've missed anyone out, I'll buy you a drink.
There's a promise. I should say as well, because we spoke a lot about poetry and about the writers, but there is a lot of music over the weekend.
There is, and it's a fusion that seems, again, led, for me personally, by what Noiriki did, a natural fusion, and I think Words of the Beat sort of says it all. You know, the songs, people that we asked to play are wordy, but no less musical for it.
Good way of putting it. Okay, I think we will call it a day there.
Thank you very much, Alistair. Thank you, I've enjoyed it. Thank you. And
we'll be back next time with someone completely different. Cheers.
I'll leave you here. The cold finds gaps between the scarf and cold, and so it's tightly wrapped. I'll leave you here. And all the moisture in your eyes is windborne, and not because you're sad. I'll leave you here. Leave you here. I'll leave